Before we begin, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon to be sure you don't miss the next episodes. We open on a dark-haired boy pulling a white-haired girl through a burning village. A giant glowing monster called the Savage appears before them and devastates the landscape behind them with a blast. It picks up the girl in its claw before the military begins blasting it with tanks. He screams as a girl is bleeding out of her chest. The wounds begin glowing the same neon green as the monster, and he sucks the glow from the wound before waking up. Now grown, he wonders aloud who the girl was. He looks down and sees his designation, the warship, the Little Garden. As he disembarks the plane, two students unveil a sign welcoming him and calling for him, saying he has the highest 100 compatibility score of all time. An effeminate boy named Emil tackles him to the ground, saying he is also a new student and they should get along. Confused, the dark-haired boy, who is named Hayato, agrees. Emil takes him to Reisha, a girl who is his age but very small in stature, making her appear younger, and Reisha's childhood best friend Fritz. Fritz pats her on the head, which causes her to shout at him as she finds it demeaning since they are the same age. Emil hugs onto his arms, and Reisha notes that they seem close despite just meeting each other, almost like they're not both guys. They then go to an assembly of the students on the Little Garden, and the student council president, known as the Queen, Claire Harvey, steps out to give a speech, but before she can begin, the two girls who had the sign at the airport burst in, apologizing for being late as they had been searching for Hayato, unsuccessfully. Claire Harvey tells them that there is no place for people on the ship who cannot follow the rules, and she expels them. Hayato is about to tell her that it's his fault, when Emil stands up and starts shouting at her that she's being unfair and abusing her power. Claire Harvey says that the students here on the Little Garden are not merely students, but fledgling slayers, being prepared to go out into the world and fight savages. In the real world, a single mistake can cost lives, and because of this, she cannot tolerate mistakes. Emil tries to argue more, but she is told that Claire's orders are absolute, and she is the queen of the military arts department. Emil says that's ridiculous, as Hayato has a higher 100 compatibility score than Claire does. Liddy, one of Claire's two assistants, tells Emil that he will be expelled with the girls if he continues to argue, and Hayato covers his mouth as he continues to try to yell. Emil is expelled as well, but when Claire asks Hayato if he has a problem with this, Hayato begrudgingly admits that he does, and asks that since the two girls were late because of him, and Emil would not have spoken out of turn had they not been expelled, this is all really on him. He asks her to be lenient, and while her assistant rebukes him, Claire tells her it's fine and challenges him to a duel. If he can beat her, she will reverse their expulsion. He is hesitant to accept, but Emil accepts for him, saying he knows Hayato can beat her. Emil takes him to the Little Garden's head scientist and top researcher on hundreds, Charlotte, who asks to be called Char. He is then sniffed by a maid cat girl named Mei, who is the assistant to Char. Emil makes a joke that Char is a child prodigy. Char says that she is old enough to be married and just looks young, but before she can finish saying Emil's name, Emil grabs her face painfully, stretching it and saying his name is Emil. Char says Liza told her that Hayato, who has never used 100 before, is going to duel Claire. She then explains that Liza is the autonomous computer that runs the systems on the Little Garden. Liza can also hear and understand people and communicate with them. Char then hands Hayato a strange device and explains that it is 100. The certain people called Slayers are able to use hundreds, which are the only weapon that is effective against savages. The 100 can form 100 different weapons and tailor them to the user, which is why they're called hundreds. Claire Harvey, for example, is a Dragoon type and uses floating cannons that she can control at will. Hayato goes with Emil to a stadium to practice, noting how tight the variable suit, which is the skin-tight suit that goes under the 100, is. Emil blushes and asks him why he's staring, which he says he's not. They then get prepared to battle, yelling 100 on to activate it. Hayato's 100, named Flying Swallow, transforms into a Chevalier type. Emil says his 100 is an Innocence type, but instead of explaining what that means, he simply attacks Hayato. Hayato instinctively forms an energy barrier to block the blast. Emil shoots more blasts, which Hayato dodges with super speed. but being new to using 100, runs into a wall at those speeds. Emil is now convinced for sure that Hayato can win and proceeds to do some hardcore battling off-screen to prepare him. Afterwards, Hayato realizes he missed 48 messages from his sister, who is in the hospital. He tells Emil that part of his arrangement with the little garden was that his sister could come and get cutting-edge medical care. He hurries to the hospital to see his little sister Karen, who is initially annoyed with him, but forgives him after he gives her a kiss on the forehead. He heads back to his room where he finds Emil in a towel. Emil freaks out, throwing stuff at him, including a suitcase, which knocks him out. When he awakens, his head is resting on Emil's lap and he leaps up, accidentally clonking heads with Emil, who reveals they're roommates. Emil volunteers to sew Hayato's badge onto his uniform for him and accidentally pricks his thumb with a needle. Hayato has a flash from his childhood of sucking the blood from the little girl's chest and puts Emil's thumb in his mouth, flustering him. The next day, the duel between Claire Harvey and Hayato is about to begin. Claire haughtily makes a proclamation that she will not be using full-body armament this fight. Hayato asks what that is, and she explains that it is a technique that few in the school can use, that unleashes all of 100's destructive power at once. Claire tells him that it would be unfair for the audience if she ended the fight in seconds. Emil, through a headset, tells him that Claire is saying that she will hold back and that he will act as Hayato's support during the duel. Erica, Claire's other assistant, yells at Hayato that having support during the duel is against the rules, but Claire tells her that it's fine as Hayato is a new student, so she will permit it as a handicap. As soon as the fight starts, Hayato is launched forward at great speed, still unused to moving in the 100. He slams into Claire, catching her off guard. The two of them tumble to the ground and he ends up on top of her. As he tries to get up, he accidentally grabs one of her enormous breasts, causing her to yelp in surprise and embarrassment. He leaps off and apologizes, but she attacks him in rage. He dodges her initial cannon strikes, but she gets in close, punching him and then kicking him across the arena. She fires more energy blasts and Emil reminds him to use his energy barriers. Claire, mad as she may be, is impressed and the two continue to fight as Emil tells him to follow their plan and get in close again. He ends up leaping above her and firing an energy ball from his sword, which she blocks with her cannons and then blasts him into the ground. She grins, intending to end the fight with a blast from her Buster Cannon, a merged form of her floating cannons. As the final blow comes towards him, his pupils become slitted, and he begins to attack her in a fury of blade strikes, catching her off guard and slicing through her cannon. She dodges the strikes and blasts him at point blank with a remade Buster Cannon, and the stadium is shocked. He has activated full-body armament and an end barrier, completely neutralizing her cannon blast. He hits her hard and she goes flying. As he charges in now to finish her, she declares that she cannot lose as she is the perfect queen and activates her own full-body armament, blasting through his barrier and then shooting him with an immense blast that destroys even the force field above the ship. The unconscious Hayato crashes onto the ground. Emil rushes out to tell him and yells at Claire, saying she cheated by using full-body armament. Char then comes out and declares Claire the winner, reminding Emil that her declaration was not actually part of the rules of the duel. Claire says that even if she won by the rules of the duel, she lost by her own rules, and so they declare it a tie and she walks off. Hayato then wakes up in the hospital with Claire in his room. She tells him that she canceled the expulsion order and asks who he is, that he is able to use full-body armament and end barrier in his first duel. Emil then rushes in and gets between them, accusing Claire of attempting to do something to Hayato, but she simply walks away, saying she had only come to apologize. On her drive back, Claire is lost in thought as Erica tries to assure her that she would have won if it was a different duel. Claire tells her it's not that, and Erica asks if it's because she had her boobs touched. Liddy chastises her, saying Claire is not the type to get worked up about that. But a dismayed Erica says she hasn't even touched Claire's boobs. Claire, embarrassed, orders 100 1 = 4, them both to stop talking about it. We then cut to the next day when Emil is doting on Hayato, who is now fully recovered. Hayato agrees to go to Central, the little garden's business district, with him. Emil is excited and says he wanted very badly to go on a date with Hayato. After a montage of romantically charged activities which leaves Hayato flustered and vaguely confused, he gets a call from his sister. She is annoyed he hadn't told her about the duel, and then flips over a tarot card, saying it depicts the shadow of a woman looming over him, and asks if he is with a woman currently, which he says he is not. She asks to come and check and shows up in a fancy throne-like wheelchair. Karen eyes Emil suspiciously, asking if he is indeed a male, and then asking if he's into men. She eventually drops it when Sakura, her favorite singer, comes on the loudspeakers. She informs him that there is supposed to be a Sakura concert on the spy stands near them. They go to the cafeteria and Karen is initially cold to Emil, but after Emil shares some pasta, she admits it is good, but still not enough to get on her good side. Claire Harvey shows up with Livy and Erica as they are eating. Karen initially does not like her, as she is the one who put him in the hospital, but Claire asks Hayato to join Selections, a special unit under the student council, executing missions like a full-fledged slayer but under the command of the student council. Claire tells him that it is not mandatory, but she believes that people with power ought to wield it to help those without it. Emil says he would like to join as well, but Liddy becomes enraged, saying he does not meet the requirements. Emil activates his 100 and says he will take Liddy on right then and there to prove his ability. Emil attacks, surprising them with his ability to switch the type of armament. Although Liddy is no slouch either, an alarm blares letting them know that a savage is attacking the Spy Islands. Char appears to tell Claire to take Emil and Hayato with her for backup. At HQ, they are informed that there are 3 savages, including a giant Trenta-class savage. Claire tells Char that she will not be using Hayato or Emil because she does not believe that they will be able to handle a Trenta-class savage, and instead will distract the 3 with herself, Erica, and Livy until the armed forces arrive and can defeat them. Char remarks that she did not think Claire would rely on her older brother, the CEO of the armed forces, to help her, and she says that this is simply the best course of action. Hayato asked her to let him go with her, telling her that he was attacked by a savage as a child and lost part of his memories, and that now he also believes in her philosophy that the strong must protect the weak. Char then informs her that it was Liza's idea to send Emil and Hayato as it was the best way to reduce casualties and damage. We see the stunning teamwork between Claire, Erica, and Liddy, with Erica binding a savage with energy chains, Claire blasting its head open, and Liddy using a drill lance to pierce its core, killing it. Hayato and Emil then attack their own savage, though Hayato's attacks don't seem to be cutting it very deeply. Emil's skill is apparent and they kill it. Liddy and Erica are taken out by the Trenta-class savage, and Claire orders Emil and Hayato to stay away as she attempts to kill it with a blast from her cannon, but it spits a blast out of its mouth and the 2 blasts neutralize one another. She goes for a second attack, but her 100 is out of energy, and she had not fully recovered from her duel with Hayato before coming out on the mission. It fires a blast that would have killed her had Hayato not swooped her off her feet and carried her into the air. She blushes, asking him why he always steals her first. This time her first princess carry, and previously the first time someone had touched her chest. They land on a roof and the savage fires another blast at them, and if they dodge it, it will destroy the airport behind them. They put up a barrier together, blocking the blast, and Emil attacks the savage, but gets hit. His armament is sliced open, revealing a scar down his chest as well as breast. Hayato has a flashback to the girl he saved as a child and screams out the name Amelia, as the savage drops a claw down to crush Amelia. But Hayato blocks it. It attacks again, and Hayato's eyes become slitted as he flies into a berserker full-body armament rage like he did in his fight against Claire, attacking it viciously. Amelia leaps through the air and kisses him, returning him to normal. He then channels all of his power into a downward attack, cutting through the savage's energy attack and cutting it in half. After the attack, and Claire's shock at seeing the fact that Emil is actually Amelia, the group flies in a plane back to the little garden and see the residents of the island have crafted a giant sign thanking them. They all feel good for having saved all of those people. Once back at the little garden, Hayato visits his sister, then goes back to his room to talk to Amelia. She tells him that the president has allowed her to keep pretending to be a guy, but he cannot live in Hayato's room anymore. Hayato asks her to explain everything she knows, and she says that when you were attacked by a savage, you were infected by the savage virus which kills most people. She was infected and he became infected trying to suck the glowing goo from her wound. Most people die from it, but if you don't, your 100 compatibility score goes way up, and you would become what is known as a variant. Since there are no more than 10 variants in the entire world, she had Char checking the 100 compatibility scores so she would know when he came to the little garden and could come herself to meet him again. She says the reason he pretended to be a guy was to be in the same room as Hayato, but hints at a second reason. She explains that with time he will be able to control the virus in himself so that it won't make him lose control. He then collapses, landing on her and flustering her as she thinks he is just trying to feel her up, but he says he is paralyzed. She kisses him with tongue, explaining that the way to suppress an active virus is with an inactive virus, so the virus in her saliva will deactivate his. Claire walks into the room to yell at Amelia for not changing rooms, and Hayato trips over Amelia and lands on Claire, his hands once again on her chest, and accidentally stealing her first kiss. She and Amelia then begin to argue as we cut to Sakura in her private jet. Sakura requests Hayato as her personal bodyguard for her upcoming show, as her previous one was cancelled due to the Savage attack. We cut to Amelia and Hayato training against Rainia and Fritz. During the fight, Hayato almost loses control but is able to keep from being taken over, and instead can now control his variant, which allows him to utilize his power without being overtaken. Rainia is sad because she thought that she and Fritz had gotten stronger, but now she believes joining the selections team to be a pipe dream. Amelia assures her that just the fact that they forced Hayato to use his full body armaments is a testament to their ability, and Fritz pats Rainia on the head as they both are happy to hear this before she yells at him for patting her on the head. Claire summons Hayato to her office and informs him that he will be Sakura's personal bodyguard during her stay on the Spy Islands, and that Sakura was not forthcoming when asked why she requested him specifically. He is told that there may be 3 more savages lurking somewhere in the island. He accepts the mission and along with his pay requests a ticket for his sister to see Sakura. His sister is humming a song when he enters her room to tell her, and she warns him to watch out for women and water. Karen requests that while he guards Sakura, that he ask for an autograph for her. The next morning, Hayato and Liddy meet Sakura, and he and Sakura drive in the limo. He wonders why someone so important would want him as a bodyguard. Once at the room, he forgets to swap it for Bugs, and as he hurries to do so, he asks if he really is the Kisarayagi Hayato. He tells her that that is his name, but he has never been a bodyguard before. She lets out a sad sigh and enters the room. Once the doors lock behind her, she asks him to marry her. He is caught off guard, and she goes on about how she took interest in him when he saved the Spy Islands and started to hit on him, asking him to date her and talking about how the media would love the marriage of the heroic slayer and the diva of the world. She gets lost in her own world, planning their life together until he puts his hand on the wall behind her, leaning in and telling her he accepts and trying to kiss her, knowing it would fluster her out of the teasing. She hurries off to the bathroom to get ready and put some space between them. While she's in the shower, she hums a tune, and it reminds him of when his sister was younger and would hum in the bath. She asks him to bring her PDA in so she can record a phrase for a song, and when he enters, he sees she left her clothes everywhere, which also reminds him of Karen. He wonders if that was what Karen was talking about with women in water. Sakura exits the bathroom, now fully dressed, and they leave the hotel. After a montage of Sakura doing celebrity things, Sakura takes Hayato to where the stage is being constructed for the show. She shows up wearing 100 and activates its ability, which creates all of the effects for her show. Char and Mei Mei show up out of nowhere and say that Sakura is a field control type slayer, which is very rare. She cannot use weapons but can fly and cast illusions over a designated area. Char says that she helped Sakura out when she was younger but does not elaborate. Sakura lands and says that in order to repay her fans for everything, she has to put on the best show possible. He reports back to Claire, who asks him to meet her at the summer home the following day, and he heads to the bath, thinking he will be the first one there. The door is locked, but his student ID opens it, and he enters to find Amelia bathing. They sit back to back in the bath and talk. She asks him to call her Amelia just this once, as he usually refers to her as Emile. He does, and then she asks him to look at her scar, which is fading now that she has met him again. and is okay with everything she went through. Hayato tells her that when he is done with the president the following day, he will be able to take her out on the island, and she gets excited, hugging him under the water. He ends up accidentally touching her chest and she leaves, leaving him once again thinking about his sister's warning of women in water. We then cut to Sakura praying that her song reaches everyone, especially one unnamed person. We then cut again to 3 mysterious slayers examining the security and laughing at how easily it will be to beat them. They are revealed to all have the slit pupils of variance.